Welcome to the next session of the Planning Salon. I'm Liane Siebenhaar. Here with me is Chris Alders, Head of Planning of LBI Digitas in Dubai. Hi Chris, nice to have you here.
Hi, thanks.
Chris, my first question is, how did you actually become a planner?
To give you an idea, when I just came out of high school, I really wanted to be in the Dutch Marine Corps. I thought it would be very manly and interesting to become a Marine. I started out, and boot camp was everything you see from the movies. It was horrible, it was tough, and in the end, my back gave out. I kind of got lost and thought what I would do, I really want to do. So I'm a big, passionate surfer. Next to that, I really enjoy martial arts, but surfing is a thing I love to do, especially as a hobby. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to work in the surfing industry. And the surfing industry took place, or is happening on the south coast of California. So I moved to Los Angeles to work for Body Glove. I started working there, and the thing I realized, it's working for a surf brand is not the same thing as being paid to surf. I realized that it's just a lot of hard work. I did a lot of logistics, and I was really interested in marketing. And I kind of started thinking about, how do we grow this surfing brand? How do we grow Body Glove? Well, digital disruption was just taking place. So I saw all these young kids. I mean, surfers used to be bums, hanging out on the beach doing nothing, and all of a sudden they all changed. They became street savvy. They started wearing. It was the revolution of the skinny jeans, basically. They started wearing skinny jeans. They started making their own films, started editing their own films. Instagram became a big thing. So I saw this whole culture pop up of young hip surfers who all of a sudden had something to add to the rest of the world. And I was like, this freedom works really well with a kind of brand which was big in the region as well, Harley Davidson, which was for big fat old men with beards, basically. And they had a tough time selling motorcycles to younger kids. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to call up Harley Davidson. I have this great plan. I'm going to link Harley Davidson to surfing, and it's going to be the best thing ever, and it's going to be great for Body Glove. And it was a fun experience. I actually wrote my first deck without knowing I wrote a deck, and called up Harley Davidson and said, I have this great plan, and it's going to be with Body Glove, a surf brand. And I got to speak to one of the original, I think the granddaughters of Harley Davidson, I must say Davidson himself. And she's like, oh, that's a great story, that's great thinking. So what company do you work for? And I kind of went yeah, I'm currently an intern at Body Glove. And there was just a long silence. And she's like, okay, thank you very much. And I never heard from her again. But for me, that was really the inspiration to kind of figure out, okay, this is what I love to do. This is what really gets me excited. I got an interview at TBWA and with the head of strategy, and I told him about my experience with Harley Davidson, and I was like, this is great. This is something I love to do. And he was like, well, let me show you how we work. And he gave me a sneak peek of the whole communications plan for Heineken. He gave me a sneak peek. This is how we build up the comms plan. And I was like, this is great. I'm going to be a strategist. And at the end of the meeting, he was like, well, nice meeting you. If you can come back in a year or two and you have some experience, I might have a place for you. So again, no job, still no strategist, no planner. So I ended up washing dishes and cleaning bathrooms at night and doing an internship at a small agency as a strategist. And I must say, I didn't even learn that much, but it gave me the credibility to land my first job at Y&R, a big above-the-line agency. Mm-hmm. So that really was going from something completely opposite, from surfing and being a beach bum to start working in advertising, and have been ever since for the last 7 years.
So you must be really passionate about planning. In terms of personal passions, how do you think have they influenced your career?
There are a couple of personal passions I have, which may seem completely unrelated to planning, which are martial arts. And I mean, martial arts is very broad, but martial arts, I did a number of martial arts and surfing as well. And I think there are three elements of especially martial arts which really apply to planning as well. First of all is progression. And progression is really about remaining forever students, constantly learning, adapting your skills, just doing your work, your day-to-day work, your day-to-day training. To give you an idea, I trained in, when I was in LA, I trained with an amazing instructor who gave Filipino knife fighting called Eskrima. And every day we would rehearse the same movements to just make them ingrained of, how do you say it, in your body movement, and really almost unconsciously learning these stick movements and these movements we did with knives. And the thing is, when it comes to planning, it's exactly that. It's just, the first bit for me is what I tell every planner is, you know, just start doing the work. We have such a passion for talking about strategy. We have such passion talking about planning, but doing actually the groundwork, the homework, is something I really learned from martial arts. And the second thing is really adaptation. I mean, when it comes to martial art, and I started out with karate, you get pretty good at it, at the basics. You learn all the katas, what they're called, all the movements, but then after a while you start sparring and you realize all the basic movements with it don't always come into play. So that's where you start adapting. You start learning that your opponent may be doing something completely different or completely unexpected. And I think it really, when it comes to planning, it's exactly the same thing. It's not as much as just going through the same steps, the same motions every time, but it's really, okay, how does technology come into play? How does, you know, how did the world change from yesterday? What are things I need to let go of? What do I need to almost unlearn to think about the problems and the issues I'm facing today? Are you still doing what you should be doing? Are you still focusing just on your strengths, or are you looking at your own weaknesses as well? The last thing is, I just called my personal toolbox. Chris Bayless, amazing ECD at the time, Tribal DDB in Amsterdam, wrote an article about people being T-shaped. And the thing is, with T-shaped, I mean, it's just a metaphor, but what it really comes down to is you have this core strength. And it's the same in martial arts. You have this core discipline. For me, it's karate, and a bit of an Indonesian martial art called pencak silat, but that's really the core of what I do. But everything after that, everything I learned, kind of, I could always fall back on something. I could fall back on my personal strengths. And I think it's the same when it comes to planning. I started out at an above-the-line traditional agency, but it made me really passionate about brand planning. And now when I live and work in a digital space, I can still fall back to those core principles. You know, how does the brand work? How does this reflect to the brand? And obviously, when we talk about digital, we're much more focused around the customer journey. But I can still reflect that back to, you know, my core strength. If I think I'm correct, about 11. And this comes, we have like a broader, it's called strategy and insights team. And then you have to think of creative strategy, but also strategists that think of specific platforms like mobile or social comms, content strategists, CRM strategists, business guys who are really focused on business strategy. They're competing with like the McKinseys and the business analysts of this world, but then you get into data. So you have your data analysts, your consultants, researchers, technicians, and because we talk to such a wide variety of clients, and we try to take them through digital transformation. So it's basically, you know, bringing digital, making the core of the business the core of what they do. We also have these people, they're called business design strategists or digital business design strategists, who actually help out a company to hire and select the right people and make sure they're doing the right position. So the variety is enormous, and I was just amazed by that. But they all still have kind of a siloed skill, and what they do is they blend these skills by, I mean, that's where you almost get like the planner versus strategist story again, where for me the old school planning comes in, where people move across the entire project and are influenced by every step along the way. So they cast the right strategist, so it either be a CRM and a mobile strategist for their project, but they're still having the oversight. So, well, I kind of, have cheated a little bit because I lived in Dubai as a child. I went to high school here because my parents moved out to the Middle East. So I have a bit of a head start, but still, as a strategist, it can be sometimes very tough. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is one of the biggest markets out here, and especially when we look at a big target audience, if we look at women in Saudi, they're definitely not going to be talking to me one-on-one. When we do research, it's very hard to get their honest opinion because they feel like they only want to express their honest opinion to their family, their close friends, their sisters, but definitely not to strangers. So yes, it has a lot of constraints. I think the most interesting bit is that because we're in digital media, we can just pick up on a lot of behavior and just measure the data behind it as well. For example, Instagram has a huge amount of users in Saudi Arabia, but all their profiles are private because they only share their pictures with their friends and family. But still, when we go on Facebook, they have fake accounts because they don't want everyone to know that they're on Facebook, and so forth. They're heavily involved in Snapchat. They use Path because it's easier to select who sees and who doesn't see their personal data. So, it definitely has a lot of constraints. I think, especially from a data analytics perspective, that helps us a lot because the internet penetration is so high, because they're online so often. It's their only, especially when I talk about young men and women in this region, it's the only place where they feel they can be truly free, where they can express themselves without anyone watching over their shoulder. What makes it so much fun as a strategist, you learn so many new things and so many new behaviors you never even thought of. It is tough, but it's the right kind of challenge if you're into planning.
Cool.
Well, like I said before, when I think of my personal skills, again, it comes to adapting yourself to technology, the workplace, your clients, building your toolbox, and just doing the groundwork, doing the hard work. And I know it sometimes sucks, but it pays off. I always say no one became a great martial artist by talking about it. So I think it comes down to the same when it comes to planning. It's just doing the hard work. But I think what helped me most, and I still find very important, is always find a mentor, preferably more than one. One in advertising or one in strategy and planning, someone that can help you and help you grow in your day-to-day skills and what you need to do. But it always really helps to have someone completely outside of the business and the industry just to keep you sharp. And often, if they're true and honest mentors, they'll be relentless and force you to self-reflect all the time. So I think that's one of the most important things. There's a very nice Japanese tradition where they talk about the relationship of a senpai and a kohai, where the senpai is the master and the kohai is the student, and there's always this respect for the master, for the elderly, for the experienced. And I think that's something that really reflects back to our skills and what we do from a day-to-day basis as well, where we just look at the experience, where we look at the people who've been in strategy for a long time and have them as our mentors, and be mentors ourselves as well to younger planners, to people who want to start up in this business, and sometimes look at talent as well that's developing. So I always like to try to keep that in mind, because it brings a certain respect for what everyone does as well, because you're a student and a teacher at the same time.
Perfect. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.